This is Larry Shapiro, and we are going to be starting a new program that is on Lightroom, which is probably one of the most commonly used programs in photography. You get Lightroom as part of the Adobe Creative Cloud Suite. Very simple to do. You go to adobe.com. You look over here in photography, click the buy now, and you'll see here the individual Creative Cloud plan for $9.99 a month. You get Lightroom CC, Lightroom Classic CC, Photoshop CC, and also Bridge CC, and 20 gigs of cloud storage. That's actually not a bad price. It's $120 a year. But when you think about it, in the past, when I first bought Lightroom, I think I bought Lightroom 2, version 2, and that cost $200. And about every 18 months, I was paying another about $80 to $120 for an upgrade. And you really needed the upgrades because not only was it upgrading the operating system, but it was also adding more and more new cameras that the program would understand how to handle the files. In addition, with this, you not only get Lightroom, but you get the beast, which is Photoshop. Photoshop, I believe I paid in excess of $500, and that was a deal because what I did was I bought a used copy for about, or I shouldn't say used, I bought an out-of-date copy, a version 4 or something like that. And then since I bought that one, and it was a lower price, and I don't think it was the regular price was in the $750, and I paid, I don't know, $400 or $500 for it, and then I could upgrade it, and you were paying an upgrade of $80 to $100. So $120 a year for getting the best of these is really, I think, quite good. Okay, so you get it, and then it ends up with a little icon in your menu bar, and it shows you when there are new things to update. I'm not going to do that now, but I need to upgrade Lightroom CC. I don't use that very often. Mainly, I'm using Lightroom Classic CC. Okay, so I'm down here in my dock, and you see there I've got Adobe Lightroom Classic CC. I'm going to open that up. You get the splash screen, and with each new version, the splash screen picture changes. Let's talk for a moment about what is Lightroom. Lightroom has two main functions. The first function is that it is a digital asset manager, and we're going to explain that in detail in a minute. And then the thing that most people think about is the post-processing, the develop module. But there actually are other functions that Lightroom has that are actually pretty cool also. It has a slideshow creator. It creates both, if you have a group of pictures and you want to set it to music and basically create a little video, you can do that. You can also then output that as a PDF so you can share it with other people. It creates titles and all kinds of things that a typical slideshow would have. The other thing that's really nice is it has a built-in book creator. It links directly to the company called Blurb, which is the one that I used even before Lightroom was connected to Blurb. I think that's the highest quality of the on-demand book publishers. It's not the cheapest, but it does a very good job. The Blurb templates are built into Lightroom, and it works really nicely. Makes it much easier to create your book. The other thing that I find extremely useful, use it all the time, is the print module. The print module has a really good interface, and what's really nice about it, as you can see here, here's the print module and it will it remembers a whole host of ways to do things, and you can set these presets. Now, we're not going to go over the concept of presets in this video, but we will be doing that in a future video. Okay, so let's go back and talk about, we're going to go to the library function here. These are the different modules: library, develop, map, book, slideshow, print, and web. You can create web pages. I've never used Lightroom for web pages. But let's talk here about the digital asset management function, because that's really probably the most important. When you import photos into Lightroom, typically what you're doing is you've already set up your hard drive to have a structure. Now, what I do is I have, we're looking right now at my photo archive. So I have a folder that's called Photo Archive. In it, it has 154,000 images. In that one folder, there are numerous subfolders. I have a subfolder called Betham. In the Betham folder, I have imported over 1,700 pictures. Now the question is, how do I keep those straight? Well, when I import them, I tell Lightroom to import them into subfolders, and I base it on dates when the pictures were taken. So as you can see here, here's pictures from October 18th, 2018. These are pictures from 2003. So I have all these different pictures, but even with that, let me go back to the beginning here. My question is always, well, how do I find what I'm looking for? A digital asset manager will help you in that, because as I import things, I'm looking, I typically not only am importing them into folders with dates on them, but I add, if I've taken a group of pictures that I want to put what is called a keyword into it as I import. Now, the keyword is part of the concept of metadata. Now, in this 1,700 plus pictures, I have 11 different keywords. So for example, if I wanted to pull up all the pictures that I've taken with the chicken supers, I could just click on that and I bring up all the pictures. All right. One of the things that we're looking to do is create a cookbook for chicken supers, and I've been taking pictures, and you can see here, I've been taking pictures since back to 2009 for chicken supers, so it's almost 10 years now. I have 313 pictures. Now, I also took pictures here of the front doors, and I used the keyword of door. I took pictures inside the Bet Kahila, because I wanted to do the stained glasses. Remember, we did a project with the Betham presidents. I did a project with photographing the Esther performance. So there's a whole lot of things to do. But let's go back to the chicken supers, because it's a good example of what a digital asset manager can do. Now, so I've put in, as I imported it, I've put in the keyword over here. You can see it, chicken supers, and I could also add other. Here is 3 pictures of Bud Rubin. Okay, so I could actually put a keyword of Bud Rubin, and then I could sync the metadata. Synchronize. So now this picture only has the keyword of chicken supers, but this has 2 keywords, Bud Rubin and chicken supers. So It's a very useful way of sort of getting the pictures that you want, okay, and remembering where they are. Now, let's say I've just imported a bunch of these pictures, and I have a plan, okay, is that first I want to go through this and sort of select the ones that I really like, because a digital asset manager really is a database. And as with any database, you can filter your photographs based on a number of attributes. A preset, a flag, a rating, a color label, the kind of image, and metadata. Metadata, I'm just talking about the, one example of metadata is the keywords, but there are other kinds of metadata. For example, I might want to look at all the pictures that I took with my Olympus EM5 Mark II, okay? And that's all those pictures, okay? I might want to decide to look at all the pictures that were taken with a telephoto lens at 45 millimeter on a micro four thirds is a 90 millimeter, and I can get that, and you can see I have all those. So I think that this is a very useful technique. It allows you to categorize the images by ratings. It groups images. It allows you to group images into collections. All these are useful when you're trying to look at a group of images. This brings us to the topic of how does Lightroom hold on to all this information? Well, as you know, with every image file, there is metadata attached to it. Sometimes it's actually built into the file. Sometimes it's attached to what's called a sidecar file. But what Lightroom does is that it creates a catalog. And the catalog it holds information on where the image is located on the hard drive and what changes have been made to the image. Changes both in the metadata as well as the post-processing data. It's really important to recognize that the original file is not changed. Only the data in the catalog is changed when you make a change in Lightroom. This is the basis of non-destructive editing. When Photoshop was first developed, it was what was called a destructive process. You made a change, you saved it, and the original file was changed forever. What people would do is they would make a copy, bring it into Photoshop, make the changes, and so you had, in essence, two pictures for the same image. One was the original and one was the changed in Photoshop. In Lightroom, you don't have to make the copy. You're never changing the basic file. You're only changing the information that's in the catalog. And the catalog, when you bring up the picture, now, for example, here's a picture that I'm going to quickly go to the develop module, and I'm going to reset this, and you're going to see it was changed to black and white, but I have basically brought it back to its original state, because the only reason that Lightroom thought it was a black and white was because there was a set of instructions that said, make this look like a black and white. Okay, and that's in the catalog. It's not affecting the actual image. Now, what's interesting about this is I actually took this picture with my camera set up in a monochrome mode, and so that the JPEG, I was shooting in both JPEG and in RAW. So the JPEG is the monochrome, and the RAW is the full color version. Now, what's important about this concept of the catalog is you really need to make all the changes within Lightroom. In particular, when you are decide to move a image or a folder on your hard drive, if you move it on your hard drive directly, Lightroom no longer knows where that picture or that folder is. So you should you should move the image inside of Lightroom so that Lightroom remembers where it is. I'm going to go back to the library, and I'm looking at all these chicken super pictures. And what I want to do with this is make some decisions on which pictures I really want to look at. Now, I'm in the library mode. I'm going to be looking just at the chicken super pictures, and any picture that I select, I can see all the information, the detail, the size of the picture, whether the flash had fired, what the focal length, what lens was used, what camera was used. I can do the same thing by right-clicking on any image here, and I can go to editing. I can set a flag, I can set a rating. But the first thing that I do usually when I'm looking at a new group of pictures is I sort of go through these and I say, okay, what are the pictures I sort of like overall? And they may not be the ones that I finally choose, but the first thing I want to do is I want to flag some pictures. So for example, I select that one and I'm going to flag it. The keyboard shortcut is hitting the letter P, and you can see that the little flag comes up. I like this one. I like this one. Let's see. I like that one. So I've got a couple here. If I click on attribute and click flag, you'll see that we only have these 6 pictures. And I look at those 6 pictures and I like this one. If I didn't like it at all, I might give it a 1 star or leave it at 0. But I say, that one picture, bud, that looks pretty good. I'll give it a 3. Typically, 3s are the ones that I'm going to be interested. After I process it, if I like it even more, I give it a 4. 5s are the ones that I'm going to print out and save. Let's take this one as a 3 also, just as an example. Now, if I wanted to further refine my filtering, I want to say anything 3 or above, and I get down to these 2 images. I then can take this image and process it. But I'm not gonna do that right now because I have other pictures that I think are going to be ones that we process. That's the way we look at pictures in general. I can remove the filters by hitting Command L again. And I think at this point, we've gone over what the digital asset management function is, keywording, flagging, stars. There's sometimes you want to put color ratings on this. If you look at this, you can set a color rating to red. A lot of times I will use the color labels to be, I've already worked on those pictures, but I still have other pictures to work on. For example, when I was coming back from my Cuba trip, I had selected the pictures. Some I had done post-processing. Those I put as a red label, but the ones that needed to continue to be processed maybe had flags and 3 stars, but didn't have the red label. So it just was a way of sorting them further. Okay, so let's take a look at how to import pictures into Lightroom. I have just inserted a SD card from my camera into a card reader, and Lightroom automatically assumes that this is something I want to import. What's interesting about this is these are coming from my Nikon D850, and this is a sort of a still life, and I have a section here that are still life pictures, and there are 11 of them, and I'm going to import them. Now, typically, I import pictures onto my internal hard drive because that's a solid state drive, and I want to be able to process them as quickly as possible. The storage drives are USB connected, and they run a little slower. But as you can see, Lightroom works pretty quickly. It's now building previews. Now, I'm going to select all of them, and I'm going to turn them just so that I can see this thing better. I did these. I'm going to deselect. I did these as a just as a to show you how we're going to do the processing. Actually, you may look like there are 10 pictures that are entirely alike, but they're actually a set of images that I'll eventually focus stack, so everything will be really sharp. But let's just take this one here just to sort of get an idea of what this is going to look like. I call this a bouquet of hammers. Okay, so I'm going to go to the develop module. I can just click on develop, or I can hit the letter D. And the first thing I'm going to do is go to lens correction, because this is a lens that I know has a profile built into Lightroom, and so it's easy. If you look at it before and after, you can see a subtle change going on. So that's the first thing that I do. Okay. The next thing I make sure I do is turn off the sharpening. You don't want to do sharpening before you do anything else. Sharpening should occur at the end. Okay. Now, the basic. So we have here a number of different things to do. First of all, you can do it in color, and you can click onto black and white, and you have an interesting black and white there, and then you can make changes, and I'll show you how to do that in a little bit. But let's work in color right now. Now, what the newest function in Lightroom is to have these profiles. And you can, as you change from one to another, you'll see, let's go to vivid, and you'll see that there was kind of a subtle increase. Look at the hammer in the back there, and you'll see it changing to this is a vivid, and this is sort of regular. Now, I have actually made my own profiles. All right. So here is here it is. This is a profile that I specifically made for my D850 with the 24-120 lens in sort of a shade area. So I'm going to just use this one, okay, because that's sort of the most closely representative of what is the actual color. Now, I may change that, okay? Now, one of the things about this, you can see here in the histogram, this is pretty good in the sense that we're not peaking here, but we probably could increase the exposure a little bit because there's more. Now, notice what happens with this. And this is what I find really interesting about these cameras. as it comes out as the, zero exposure, it looks like I have lost information, but in fact, I haven't. As as I move this, you can see that I'm not really losing information. The curves are still there. Now, the highlights are a little more than I want, and I can bring that down by going to the whites, bringing the whites down, bringing the highlights down. And so I've got really a full range there. And that's good. Now, the blacks I can make a little darker. I really want to keep as much information in the dark areas. So just, now from an artistic point of view, that may not be where I want to be. But I do want to be able to show you the information. Now, clarity is another global, and this increases the tonal separation in the midtones, and you get that sort of crisp look, and that's nice. Now, dehaze in this circumstance is probably not going to do much, but you can see even with, sometimes you find an interesting effect with dehaze is that it brings down the highlights but doesn't lose the shadows. Now, vibrance increases saturation without changing skin tone. So let's see how that works. I can make that's kind of an interesting look, versus increasing the saturation. I find increasing the saturation makes it a little garish. I'd rather do the vibrance just a little bit. Increasing both vibrance and saturation is done with a judicious hand, okay? Now, do I want to do something different here? Let's take a look at some of these tools, because I've sort of done the basic exposures here. First of all, I may want to change the crop, okay? Now, you can make this so it'll print on an 8.5 by 11 or 8 by 10. Let's go 8.5 by 11. All right. So you can see, and you can drag this that's a bit too tight. Let's go over here. Okay. And then you either hit enter or return. I like the fact that it has the rule of thirds built into this. Kind of neat. And just click on that again and you're done. Now, again, non-destructive. Look at this. That other stuff is still here. And you can change that to say 8 by 10. All right. And you're good. It doesn't make a difference. All right. Now, let's talk about using some of these other tools. Now, this is the spotting brush. Now, there's some crud over here, and you can get rid of that. I'm going to increase the brush size a little bit, and you can just keep doing stuff so that you get rid of it. Now, it's not, and then I hit close and they all disappear. It is not the best healing brush type thing, but it is, it is useful. So let's say if I wanted to get rid of that, you can see that. Now, if you didn't like what that was, you can actually turn it around so that you get an area that works better for you. So let's just leave it at that. Now, the gradient tool is probably the most useful. Now, let's say I wanted to bring the background, the top part of the background down a little bit. Now, as you can see, I've just sort of dragging the background down, and now it defaults to what you did the last time. So I'm going to set these all back to 0. And let's decrease the exposure a little bit. Now, one of the things is that there is a range mask, and I'm going to put the luminance, and when you show the mask, you can see where it is. The red is where the effect is going to be, and you can actually change the range so that you're not really getting the you're not getting this part of the hammer, but you're just doing the backgrounds. So it's a question of very gently making these changes. Okay, so I'm going to turn that off, and we've darkened the background. Now, but we're going to close that, but then I'm going to take the brush, because I want to take this brush, and I'm going to decrease it in size a little bit. Nope, too much. Too big. That's about the right size. There we go. And I'm just going to sort of brush in this area here. All right? And I'm going to then increase the exposure. There it goes. When I increase the black, that's really where it does it. So, if I've really increased the exposure in that shadow area. Now, if I wanted to do that over here, do the same thing, and you can see it's lightening up a little bit. Okay, let's close that down, and let's add a second brush. This is a new one, and I'm actually going to brush it into over here, but I'm actually going to drop the exposure. So I make these, now you can do a before and after. And see, here's the original before, here's the after. And you can see that we've made quite a bit of changes to it. Now, this before and after was this tool here. This brings us back to where we were before and after. Okay. Now, I want to also look here at what other things I can do. Tone curve, for example. I like to have a little bit of contrast. Medium contrast usually works, gives it a little bit of snap. Okay, you can also do it by yourself. You can just pull this up a little bit and go over here and bring it down a little bit, so you have full control over the tone curve. You also have control over the colors. So, for example, if you want, there's a little tool here. If I wanted to decrease the saturation back here, I can click on this tool and then bring it up onto the picture, and you can see that it's darkening that because I had it on luminance. If I changed over to saturation, did the same thing, we can make it less saturated. Take away some of the color so that the can and the hammers stand out better. Okay. Sharpening. Now, going up here and looking at you can make this 100%, okay? And then add some sharpening at this point will give you an idea. I only do the sharpening towards the end, okay? I go back here to fit. Lens correction I did in the beginning. Transform. Now I don't think we need to transform this at all, but if I wanted to, there's actually a nice auto function here. Let's see what happens if it does anything. It doesn't really do much. If this was a building, we could make some. And effects is mainly vignetting, and I think this is a good picture to put some vignetting in. Now I have to say that I don't like the fact that the vignette took away the detail there. Now, one of the things I can do, I think that you have to be careful. That's pretty good. So I don't want to lose the detail in that hammer up there. All right. So I'm pretty much finished with this picture. If I wanted to print it, I just go over to print, and I can pick any of my presets, and I can pick a paper. Let's say it was letter size, and I want to make it in portrait mode. Yes. Why didn't it change? Oh, because I put it in landscape mode. There we go. And we're ready to print. I think that this is a good first introduction to Lightroom. I think that we're going to be doing another topic on this, and here will be some of the we'll talk about presets and exporting images and making collections. You can do HDRs and panos. We talked about keyword. You can use plugins like Topaz. You can make black and white conversion. You can make a book. You can do printing. You can't learn Lightroom, which is a pretty complex and comprehensive, not complex, it's a comprehensive thing. It is something that you need to practice with so that you get familiarity with it. I would also say that there is some frequently used shortcuts that really make things work well. The P for creating the flag, a U, pressing U eliminates the flag. G gets you back to the grid mode in the library. R for crop, and B for quick collection. And there's just a lot of ways to work with this, and I hope that you'll use Lightroom, and we'll talk about more uses of Lightroom next month.